Hello, dear Victorians, and welcome to the April monthly update video for Victoria 3. My name is Sanna, I'm part of the community team for Victoria, and in this month's video, we're going to take a deeper look at trade. First, let's talk about construction.
Construction tends to be pretty similar in most strategy games. You save up a certain amount of money, you order a construction, you pay a lump sum, and eventually the construction gets done. In Victoria 3, we've done things a bit differently, and construction works more like a capacity in that it's a produced value which you have available each week for the construction of new buildings. All countries get a little bit of free construction every week, but to produce more, you will want to build up a construction sector. The construction sector is a type of government building that requires POPs to work on it, and different types of materials such as wood and fabric, or in more advanced variants, steel and electricity. Which new buildings your construction goes towards is handled through your national construction queue. New buildings that you order built will get added to the construction queue and will then usually get completed in sequence. However, there is a limit to how fast each project can progress. You can't build a whole canal in just a week. If your construction output exceeds the limit of a single construction project, what this means is that there can be a whole bunch of different projects progressing at once in your country. There is also a local factor to construction called state construction efficiency, which determines how much you get out of each point of construction you put into a state. State construction efficiency is determined by factors such as whether the state has low market access and whether there is a local construction sector in the state that helps make it more efficient. Ultimately, the most important thing to know about construction is that it all comes down to what you're trying to do. If you're just trying to build up a rural economy of farms and pastures, you don't need a very big construction sector. On the other hand, if you want to be a modern 19th century economy with a lot of industry and mines and modern economic progress, then you're going to need to pay a lot for steel.
Now that we have a firm grasp of construction, let's learn about market expansion and how to achieve it with customs unions.
Generally, a customs union is understood to be a trade agreement between a bloc of nations. In Victoria 3, this is represented as a bilateral agreement between two nations, where one agrees to subject its national market to the other, thus creating a junior partner and a senior partner in the arrangement. There are multiple caveats to this. A customs union can be more than just the national market of two combined nations. A senior partner may have agreements with multiple junior partners throughout the world, thus extending the national market beyond just two countries. In most cases, this arrangement is agreed upon by both participant countries, but that is not always the case. You may find yourself, as a subject, having no say in the matter of whether or not your suzerain enforces a customs union upon you. Or, if you find yourself holding the favor of a great power, you may politely ask to join their customs union. They couldn't certainly say no, but beware, if they hold a favor on you, the opposite is also true. So what does subjecting yourself to another national market mean? In all intents and purposes, your national market that you once had no longer exists. Everything is taking place from the perspective of the senior partner's national market. That means that all of the combined goods and services within your two countries, your one national market, are being bought and sold. All of your POPs are competing against each other for their qualifications and wages in their separate buildings. Customs union is a way to expand your market without painting the map by military means, and thus means you may avoid suffering the consequences of such. It's an agreement that you partake on the diplomatic stage, free for the most cases of all infamy and repercussions of a diplomatic play. In a customs union, there is less of a need to worry about engaging in trade between yourself and other markets. This is, of course, assuming that those other nations that have joined you have all the resources you seek. But what if a customs union is something you find you may not benefit from? You don't have the resources or the pops to take advantage of such situations. Why might you still join one then? It is a means of national survival. It certainly beats being wiped off the map. With a customs union, you tie your national economies together, but you still find a way to keep political independence.
Expanding your market is one thing, but how does market-to-market trade work in a more practical sense? Let's talk a little bit about trade routes and tariffs.
Trade is the movement of goods between national markets, and it is conducted by the trade centers of their respective countries. At the start of the game, most nations engage in a more isolationist trade policy, while your industrializing powers find themselves under mercantilist means. Though as the rest of the world industrializes alongside them, they might find they choose either to embrace free trade or protectionism. If you find that another nation is flooding your national market with goods that are either undercutting your industries or causing turmoil amongst your pops, in the case of the opium trade in China, you may seek to embargo such a good to limit its effects on your nation. Tariffs represent a national government's ability to intervene in the trade between two national markets in order to gain profit. Tariffs are set on both the imports and exports of a national market, and depending upon the trade policy of a nation, these ratios may be changed. Tariff levels can be set in ways similar to domestic taxes, though, like your domestic taxes, they affect more than just the revenue you take in. The amount of money you pull in by tariffs comes at the cost of the profit of your trade centers and their pops, and will thus hinder their efficiency. Free ports serve a special function within Victoria 3, where they allow the bypassing of embargoes to any adjacent land market. An example of a treaty port at game start is Macau, which is owned by Portugal. Earlier we talked about customs unions, where one nation subjects itself to the national market of another. Now with trade in mind, both the junior and senior partner of a customs union are able to conduct trade, though they are tied to the trade policy of the senior member. If money is the sinews of war, then trade is the lifeblood of nations. And with embargoes and tariffs, you can ensure you get your pound of flesh.
Trade doesn't only happen on land. Sometimes travel overseas is necessary. Our next topic is shipping lanes.
Shipping lanes is how we represent any logistical undertaking that involves moving goods or people by sea. Shipping lanes are port-to-port connections and come in three different types: trade routes, supplying overseas armies, and maintaining connections to overseas states. To maintain a shipping route, you need a number of convoys based on how long the shipping lane is and how much it's moving. Convoys are a nationwide resource that are produced by your port. In the early game, they use clippers, but later on, as you research steamships, you can activate the use of those steamships, which will make your ports more efficient. If the maintenance of all your shipping lanes requires more convoys than you have, then all of your shipping lanes will operate at a reduced efficiency. The cost of maintaining a trade route is based on how many goods you are moving from a port to another port, and of course, how far you're moving them. For trade routes, the cost of maintaining a trade route is based on how many goods the trade route is moving from one market to another. Any states you have in your market which can't draw a connection to your market capital by land will also cost you convoys based on how much infrastructure is being used in those states. While the market owner has to provide the lion's share of convoys, other countries in the same market are also required to contribute. To supply an overseas army, you also need a shipping lane, and the number of convoys required by this shipping lane depends on how many troops you're moving overseas and of how far away from their home headquarters they are. The logistical needs of an overseas army will continue as long as they are deployed away from their home headquarters. You can think of the shipping lanes as the vital arteries of your overseas empire.
There's a lot of interesting history when it comes to trade. One such interesting event is the Opium Wars. let's take a look at how the Opium Wars are represented in Victoria 3.
Cultural obsessions are a phenomenon by which an entire culture can be fascinated with the purchase of a specific trade good. These pops will spend a lot more on this specific trade good when compared to others in its category. So for instance, Han pops will spend a lot more on opium when compared to liquor or tobacco. By the law of supply and demand, this will drastically increase the price of that trade good within the market. The high price of these goods makes them very profitable within the market. This means that other countries could potentially exploit the situation using their own trade routes. As the game progresses, cultures can develop obsessions with new trade goods, for example automobiles or radios. Contrary to cultural obsessions, religious taboos drive down the demand for a good. Religious taboos stay static throughout the entire game. Muslim pops, for instance, will always consume less liquor and wine. Cultural obsessions can have profound political consequences. In Victoria 3, we represent content such as the Opium Wars and the Temperance Movement. Historically, the Opium Wars broke out when British merchants flooded the Chinese market with opium, despite the Qing embargo on the goods. In Victoria 3, the Opium Wars can break out in any country, so long as the conditions are correct. Although this crisis can emerge for a variety of countries, China begins in the midst of the situation. In Victoria 3, the Opium Wars are represented through a series of journal entries and events. There are a variety of conditions for failure or success for all of the countries involved, which are displayed within the journal entry. China's goal is to suppress the flow of opium into the country. Other countries might want to bypass the embargo by forcing China to see the treaty port. If China manages to thwart the machinations of the great powers, they can lose their cultural obsession with opium and avert the crisis. If China fails to suppress the flow of opium, it will face dire consequences, such as a rise in radicalism and turmoil. In the long run, losing the Opium Wars can set China up for a chain reaction of disaster. This can result in China shattering like a porcelain vase.
And so we have reached the end of yet another monthly update video, but we'll be back again with more from the dev team next month. Until then though, as always, follow us on Twitter and Facebook, join the official Victoria Discord server, and subscribe to the Victoria 3 newsletter to stay up to speed on all things Victoria 3.